Welcome back, and I'm right about to delve into the topic of child labor. If you look at the UNICEF report, the recent one tells us that 34% of Ghanaian children are engaged in child labor. Dr. Nana Derby tells me that this statistic is not giving us an accurate rendition of what is actually going on. I wonder why she says that and whether she thinks that the situation is better or worse. But I'm about to find out alongside with you. And good morning and welcome to Sunrise.
Good morning and thanks so much for having me.
It's wonderful. As soon as I read out that statistic, people responded on our page on Facebook with comments such as, well, it's actually even worse and it's just as bad. Come and see it for yourself. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it depends on the context you try to look at it from. Child labor exploitation is kind of complex, especially in our situation where we have so many children who live and work around the house. We have those who are on the farms. We have those. We don't have so much problems with sex slavery as far as children. But when we talk about children in the household, it's always difficult to really distinguish children who are living as maid servants from those who are not living as maid servants. When you put all of those together into the categories that they are talking about, you realize that the numbers are going to be more than that. How do they get into the households to really interview and distinguish child laborers from those who are real children of the household? Usually when we use surveys and not qualitative methodologies, we're not able to really come to that conclusion that these are the actual children who are workers and those who are members of the household who are treated with love, who grow up with their childhood, enjoying the childhood, those who have not been exploited in any way. We find it very difficult arriving at that kind of information.
So what method of assessment or measurement would you advocate or promote as opposed to the quantitative one?
I was really a quantitative person. I loved my statistics as a student, but when I decided to research child domestic servitude, I realized that, when statisticians go and administer surveys, it is always difficult for them to, as I said earlier, to distinguish between real household children from those who are there as maid servants. Usually, in our Ghanaian setup, we don't want to really say that this is not my child, that is my child. We want to put them all together. So at times, some of these surveys may not help us to know who are being exploited. So I decided to be more qualitative, go deeper, talk to them individually. A very big problem I find with the statistical numbers that we are working with is that we want to generalize, we want to be objective, we want to be able to, base our research on a sample and apply it to the rest of society. But in social research, we must always understand the fact that context is very important. Culture is very important. Things are different from group to group. So my experience as a person who is living with, say, an uncle, an aunt, or some stranger who doesn't know me, who is not related to me in any way, might not be the same. Where the same as that child who is living in a similar situation in a different household. So when we look at the children case by case and understand them subjectively, get to know what their experiences are, have deep discussions with them, we'll be able to know exactly what they are going through and what we need to do to help those specific situations instead of just working with numbers and generalizing. We cannot always subject human experiences to numbers. There are some cases when it comes to economics, yes, we can deal with numbers, but when it comes to human experience, especially when it has to do with abuse, when it has to do with exploitation, when it has to do with psychological exploitation of the children, emotional abuse and all that, you want to really understand them from their subjective perspective.
Now, earlier on in our conversation, you mentioned slavery, and I wonder whether that is in any way descriptive of the situation of children who find themselves in a situation of domestic servitude.
Okay, I have been sort of criticized for referring to the children who live in households as even domestic servants because they would want me to say that they are house helps, but why do we sugarcoat it if we know that we are treating them very well? They live under slavery-like conditions.
It's forced labor.
It's forced labor because children cannot give consent until they are 18 years. And then the parents make the decisions for them. And some of the experiences I have had with the parents in the rural regions is that they don't even know the kind of situations their children are in. We go to the villages, we tell them that, oh, you know, we love our children, we want to go and live with them in the cities, they're going to have access to good schools and all that. Now, the children arrive in Accra or wherever they are, they work 10 to 18 hours a day, in some cases even more. Some of them are lucky, they are enrolled in schools, but when they are enrolled in school, it's a different situation altogether, because before they go to school, they work about 4 or 5 hours, right? And if I work 4 hours before I start my day, I'll go starting my day tired. So these kids go to school extremely tired. They go sit down there, sleep, doze off. Some of them go to school without food. And I've been to schools where the headmistress and head teachers have to contribute to buy food for the children, to buy clothing. Some of them come in tattered clothes. But these are children who sell pure water, like they do it before they go to school. When they come back from school, they work. I had a girl who said that she lived at Bubuashi and used to come to Kaneshi to sell pure water, and she did it 3 times a day after school. By the time she get back home, I'm sure she'll be too tired to work. And before she went to school, she had to go and sit at the store for the woman to come and, release her basically before she went. She'll be late and she don't understand. So you have, just a second, you have 18-year-olds in primary 1, primary 2, and the parents are happy in the villages because the kids are in school, but they keep failing.
Do you make a distinction at all between children in fishing, children in farming, children in trading, in begging, sometimes even in the sex trade, and children in domestic servitude? Or do you think that they are all one?
When we conceptualize slavery, right, we look at some characteristics that have to be present before we can say that this is a slavery situation. So if they work in several hours, they don't have the ability to leave, they are not paid, and most of them are not paid. Yes, there's going to be general. We're going to say that all of them are slaves. But then the child who lives and works within the household has a better advantage than those who are working as fishers and all that. I spoke to an 11-year-old who went to the Volta Lake to work when he was like 5 years old. He said he witnessed somebody getting drowned, and they ate once a day, and they ate just Gary. They were helping to fish, but they didn't have any of the fish to eat. They ate once a day, they slept very little, they had no time to play, and yet they were witnessing some of the kids getting drowned because they had to dive deeper to go and untie the net. Such situations are really critical. I wouldn't compare that to somebody who lives in the household, but those who live in households, they work longer hours than the others because some of them sell, they have to clean, they have to babysit, they have to, of course they may have access to school, but they are not really enjoying formal education.
You've been coming to Ghana on a regular basis, and I wonder how you evaluate our progress in terms of addressing child labor and child servitude. How well, or how much better have we or should we be doing?
We've made some progress, I would say. First of all, Ghana was the first. I keep saying this, and I apologize for repeating myself. Ghana was the first country to ratify the Convention on the Rights of the Child. It was so good. We are one of the few countries that have a cabinet ministry on women, gender, and social protection, which is very good. We're one of the few countries, or developing countries, that have implemented the free compulsory universal basic education, another excellent achievement. We have all these, and yet we still have so many children
What
in the street.
What explains that?
And that's because, one, we have a culture that permits it. When we ratify these conventions and we come up with our own laws and all that, do we implement these laws? Do we enforce the laws? The laws are there, yes. Do the children know about their children's rights? No. Do teachers here in the cities know about them? Some of them do. If you go to the villages, most of the teachers don't know about these. So we have the laws extremely disconnected from these realities on the ground. Disconnected in the sense that people don't know them. They don't understand them. And then if you look at the content of the Children's Act itself, it's so much not realistic because, first of all, you are asking children to go and disobey parents. And it's not our culture. So how do we ensure that we are having appropriate laws that are enforceable in this country where children can really easily relate to and help protect themselves?
That's a fantastic question. How? Considering that you're an associate professor from the Department of Sociology, Social Work and Criminal Justice, University of Virginia, I suppose you would have
Virginia State University.
Virginia State University. I suppose you would have a clue to some of the answers,
What was your
possible
question?
answers. How?
How do we do it?
How do we reform our laws?
First
to
of
make them
all,
more realistic, as you put it?
First of all, I'm an action-oriented researcher. I believe in research. I believe in understanding what is going on and making sure that we utilize the findings. Don't just conduct the study and put the results on the shelf. No, work together with all the stakeholders. We have so many departments. We have so many non-governmental organizations. We have so many resources coming in. We have to sit down and come up with a holistic strategy that will effectively help us implement, identify the problem, identify the solutions, not just identify the solutions, but put the solutions that we identify into practice. Now, one of the biggest problem I have found is we are in denial that the problem exists. And
you say there's no problem.
Oh, of course, I was in Parliament, was last year or 2 years ago, and there was a gender committee I met. I didn't want to talk about it, but today I think I can. They deny the fact that we have such a problem. I was told I was coming to spoil our culture. But my question is, if that parliamentarian who believes that I am here to spoil our culture, it's my culture too, because I'm first and foremost Ghanaian. If that woman feels that it is okay for children to live in other households without love, why doesn't she allow her children to go and live there too? I was invited by a Rotary club to come and talk about my project and all that. When I finished, it was problematic. I was basically heckled. They didn't understand. They thought that there was no problem, and that the kids. One woman said, "Oh, she doesn't know about the kids in the street and all that, and that there is nothing they could do about it." And I thought that Rotary Club is so humanitarian that they would be concerned about the problems of the children. And when she said, I said, if I live in Virginia and I am here thinking that I could do something about it, how about that woman, that organization that is just within miles of where the children are being exploited? So we have to accept the fact that it is, of course, one of the progresses I have found is the fact that powers that be talk about the Ministry of Women and Gender and Social Protection, the Department of Labor, Social Welfare. They are now talking about the fact that we cannot rely on the numbers and that we have to be more qualitative in our research. And by qualitative research, we're talking about descriptive, basing it on the individual experiences and making sure that we understand what they see themselves and where we are going.
What would you say to people who say that these are just chores? Children working in homes in exchange for food, clothing, shelter, and education are just delivering chores. And how are you going to find out whether there is a fine or even a broad line between servitude, forced labor, and everyday house chores? Okay,
that's very important. That's a very good question. It's always important to distinguish between positive children's labor and negative children's labor or children's work. I worked as a child. I fetched water.
I fetched water.
Yes,
I did the gardening. I took out the rubbish. I cleaned. I even repaired things.
Right. I sold and all that. Right. So we did all that, but children's labor becomes negative when the chores we do impede our childhood. And by child, I'm referring to our rights to education, our rights to social life and protection, our rights to play and to be loved. And that is so critical, because I am not saying don't go for the children from the villages. Hey, if you can go for 10, 20, 50 of them, please go for them. But make sure that each and individual child you bring from the village receives love, because nobody chose their parent. All right, but if we decide to help, we have to help genuinely. We have to make it reciprocal, and there has to be a balance, equitable exchange of services. Show love to the child. Allow the child to do her homework. Be interested in the child's school, and then let the child do the work. All right, so that we make it positive, we make it good for everybody.
Thank you very much. C Nana Derby, she holds a PhD. She's an associate professor on the Department of Sociology, Social Work, and Criminal Justice in the Virginia State University, sharing some of her thoughts on the situation that many children in Ghana are contending with, that are faced with on a daily basis, sometimes with deadly consequences. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this morning's edition of Sunrise.